Yo, what's good? Welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia 76ers Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. Hope all of you out there are having a fantastic weekend, and we have an awesome show on tap for today's episode here on the channel. ESPN predicting the conference champions and NBA Finals winner today on the show. How does Philadelphia stack up, and where do they finish? First, before we get started, the Sixers have maybe the best chance to win the Eastern Conference, going all the way back to Allen Iverson with all of the acquisitions that Daryl Moore has been able to make and how this team has been constructed. So if you want the Sixers to win the East for the first time since AI did it back in 2001, I want you to hit that thumbs up icon, like the video, and let's get the good vibes going. So ESPN did this with a points system. So as you can see here to my right, all of these votes coming in, and the Boston Celtics getting the most points to win the Eastern Conference with 97, coming off an NBA championship. That's expected, right? What's interesting is that Philadelphia actually had the second most points from ESPN to win the East. Thus, they come in second place. So kind of like the second best odds according to ESPN in a way. 1 point ahead of the New York Knicks. Milwaukee Bucks only with 13, so ESPN pretty much indicating that their stock is down. And then the Cleveland Cavaliers with 2 points, not on this list, the Orlando Magic. Now, as part of today's show, we're going to go through all of these teams, and we're going to take a look at their offseason moves as a little bit of a refresher and a little bit of a learning course for all of you who might not be familiar with what these teams accomplished and did this offseason. So, with Boston getting those 97 points, Boston very active in bringing back pretty much every member of that team that won the NBA championship last year, and of course, rewarding some of their players. Re-signed Jason Tatum, 5-year, $315 million deal for the NBA Finals MVP. Derek White, 4 years, $118 million. Re-signed Sam Hauser, 4 for 45. Credit to him. He's really worked on his game. Xavier Tillman, pretty much a vet min. And then Luke Cornett, another vet min deal, 1 year, 2.8. And then Boston drafting the guard out of Creighton, Baylor Shireman, with the 30th overall pick in the 2024 NBA draft. So the Celtics roster right now, starting five going to remain the same. Jrue Holiday, Derek White, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, and then a lot of their key reserves still on this team. And this is a Boston organization that is bringing back a lot of players, pretty much their entire squad that won the NBA championship last year. And that leads us to this thought, right? Boston is still the team to beat. I know it's difficult to say. I hate them just as much as you do, maybe even more than you do. I hate the Boston Celtics more than the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Giants, the New York Mets, the Atlanta Braves, the New Jersey Devils. I hate the Boston Celtics. But two things can be true. I can hate them, and I can still say they are the team to beat, not just in the East, I think across the entire NBA. Offseason moves for the Knicks. Acquired Mikal Bridges from Brooklyn for 5 first-round picks. The Villanova Knicks in action. That deal also included a first-round pick swap. Re-signed Jalen Brunson on a 4-year, $156 million deal. He left millions on the table to help the Knicks build out the remainder of their roster. New York not done there, signing OG Anunoby to a 5-year, $212 million deal. And then they brought back Precious Achiuwa on a 1-year, $6 million contract. Isaiah Hartenstein, the master of the push shot against the Sixers in that first round, signing with OKC. Big loss for New York. And then the Knicks elsewhere, signing former Sixer campaign, 1-year, $3 million deal, Chemi Okeke, and then drafting Tyler Kolek, the guard, out of Marquette, who's kind of an intriguing point guard. Knicks roster. So you lose Isaiah Hartenstein. Mitchell Robinson has shown that he's capable of starting. But again, big loss for New York, losing Hartenstein. Really good player on both ends. Their bench, a lot of the key contributors going to return. Miles McBride, you have Campaign, who you added, Dante DiVincenzo, Tyler Kolek, Josh Hart. You have Bates Diop, Okeke, Precious Achiuwa, who the Knicks brought back, as I said, and then Jericho Sims kind of rounding out that front court. And under Tom Thibodeau, and with the individual players on this team, the makeup of it, they're going to be physical. They're going to be lengthy. They have some star talent. Jalen Brunson has emerged as a star. Depth, they're well coached. They are going to be tough out. As we saw in the first round last year, every one of those playoff games coming down to the wire, that series and those games, they were decided on the margins. Milwaukee Bucks, kind of a silent offseason for Glenn Rivers. Signed Gary Trent Jr., 1 year, 2.6. Good value deal there to bring in some athleticism, some offensive pop coming in off the bench. And then outside of that, just not a lot of moves made by the Bucks. They lost Malik Beasley, Jay Crowder, Patrick Beverley, drafting A.J. Johnson and Tyler Smith. So look, just like it was the case last year, Milwaukee's going to have to be led by Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Of note, Chris Middleton this offseason got surgery on both of his ankles. You have Brook Lopez and then Tyshawn Prince, Taurean Prince, Tyshawn Prince, Detroit Pistons legend, alongside Coatesville native Rip Hamilton. But you look at that starting five, I don't think that's really a team that I'm going to fear all that much. Dame Giannis going to have to keep Milwaukee in games. Stars are going to have to carry you. Giannis has been injured over the last couple of years. Dame hasn't been the same player over the last couple of years. And with that Milwaukee team, I think the brilliance of what Daryl Morey has been able to do, star-level talent, but he's built out that team to the point where the Sixers have depth. Milwaukee, don't think they have enough depth come playoff time. Who wins the East? BOS for the Celtics, NYK for the Knicks, PHI for our Sixers, and then MIL for the Milwaukee Bucks. Chip, what do you make of this? Who do you think wins the East here?
Yeah, look, it's going to be obviously very, very competitive trying to catch up to Boston this year in the Eastern Conference. They're going to win their games, probably 60-plus regular season games if I had to put a number on it. So can Philly, with this regular season schedule, with their new big three and their new additions, push the Celtics and try to go for that 1 seed to ensure that they can get home court come playoff time? And then once the playoffs start, with this new squad, will they have enough to overtake a Boston Celtics team that lost 3 games in the playoffs last year, in all the playoffs? It's going to be very, very difficult. And of course, with the Knicks in the fold as well, with everything they did, they only got better, I believe, from last season. So it's going to come down to health, of course. Assuming all teams are healthy, I do think the Sixers are the second best team in the Eastern Conference. Milwaukee, I'm not too worried about. They don't have, in my opinion, the depth outside of Dame and Giannis. I don't think Chris Middleton is going to be what he once was, and after that, it's a significant drop-off. I'm not worried about Cleveland or Orlando or Indiana, of course, is a team you have to mention because they made the conference finals last year. But I think if the Knicks were healthy, they would have beaten them rather easily. But, of course, you got to give them their respect. I do think Philly has as good of a shot of any team to win the Eastern Conference, but can they get over the hump and get over their demons and beat Boston? It's going to be very, very difficult, obviously with how talented they are, but bringing Paul George in the fold, another year with Kelly Oubre here, bringing Guerschon Yabusele, all these other players, I think they're better equipped than any other year to finally do it and take down Boston and make the NBA Finals.
You make some good points there. Additionally, and you mentioned some of these teams, right? Like you look at the East, I think it's going to be razor thin between the 6 seed and the 2 seed, kind of like it was last year. The teams not mentioned on that list that we showed you at the rip: Indiana Pacers, Miami Heat, Orlando Magic. Those are going to be tough teams as well. Now, coming up next, potential NBA Finals opponents out in the Western Conference. A lot of you Sixers fans might not be familiar with the other conference out there. Just that's how it goes sometimes. But we'll talk about that coming around the corner because one of our jobs here on 76ers Now is to inform all of the real ones. Team USA shirts available after America, USA winning gold medal against France in the 2024 Olympics. Love this shirt. If you want it too, head to chatsports.com/Team USA. That is chatsports.com/Team USA. Link is hanging out attached to the pinned comment and in the description of today's 76ers Now. Same deal out in the West as far as the points system from ESPN, and some changes here from what we saw in the NBA Finals and where some of these teams finished last year. Oklahoma City Thunder, 83 points. They were the number 1 seed, but beat by the Dallas Mavericks. Minnesota Timberwolves made it to the Western Conference Finals, lost to the Dallas Mavericks. So OKC, Minnesota 1-2. OKC with those 83 points. T-Wolves with 48. And then you have the Western Conference champion Dallas Mavericks at 29 points. Denver Nuggets, 18 points. The NBA champions from 2 seasons ago. And Phoenix Suns going to run it back, 8 points for Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and company, with a new head coach there in Phoenix as well. So interesting stuff in the West for OKC, signing Isaiah Hartenstein, the aforementioned big, formerly of the Knicks, 3-year, $87 million contract. Re-signed Joe, 4 years, $48 million. That's Isaiah Joe, former Sixer legend. Arkansas, Woo Pig. Wiggins, 5 years, $45 million. So they really wanted to focus on bringing back some of their own players there. Joe Wiggins and then Hartenstein. They needed to get better in the front court because when you think about Chet Holmgren, I think at the NBA level, not a center, more of a 4. That's why they brought in Hartenstein, who can do kind of the grimy work down low. Also, underrated trade that a lot of people have forgotten about, acquiring Alex Caruso from the Bulls for Josh Giddey. Giddey can't shoot, just wasn't working out. Drafted Nikola Topic, the guard out of Serbia, Dylan Jones, Weber State, and A.J. Mitchell, the guard out of UC Santa Barbara. So for the most part, the Thunder's starting 5, the same, with the exception of Isaiah Hartenstein being included in there. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander might be a top 5 player in the NBA right now, no cap. Lou Dort, the Dort Chamber, great defensive player. Chet Holmgren, very impressed with him last year. Can shoot from anywhere, can block shots. Coming out of Gonzaga, I was worried about the thin frame. Now, he did get hurt, obviously, year 1, so last year was his rookie year, quote-unquote. I thought he was really good. And then Jalen Williams, an emerging all-star caliber player who's really good. Needs to add a little dribble drive to his game, but that development path reminds me a little bit of Jaylen Brown. Hartenstein, huge addition, and I really like their bench. I think Caden Wallace can have a bigger role. Some of the other pickups that we talked about. This is a really legitimate team. You have the other Jalen Williams in there. So OKC, number 1 seed in the West last year, Sam Presti working his magic. Now the favorites out West for good reason this upcoming season, according to ESPN. And that team, the makeup of it, young, athletic, with the playoff run under their belt. They needed to kind of get that playoff experience. They certainly got that. Minnesota Timberwolves re-signing Luka Garza, 2-year, $4.5 million deal. Signed Joe Ingles, 1 year, $3.3. He played for the Magic last year. Did lose Kyle Anderson, Monte Morris, Jordan McLaughlin. Drafted Rob Dillingham, the guard out of Kentucky. I think him and Edwards, when they share minutes on the floor together, a lot of scoring. And then Terrence Shannon got buckets at Illinois, a left-handed flamethrower, so to speak, who's also a good offensive player. Why Minnesota didn't really make a lot of big moves, they don't have the money to do that. And when you talk about second apron teams, I believe the T-Wolves are in that second apron. So they are restricted with what they can do. Now, Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, you have McDaniels. That's a really, really good squad still. And they did lose some depth, but you still have Naz Reid and some other players as backups going to have to step up, especially the young players. Dillingham, Shannon, they might be asked to contribute as rookies. You have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who is certainly an experienced player. So for good reason, I kind of like what ESPN did here. OKC T-Wolves 1-2, and we'll get to the Dallas Mavericks. Ant just keeps getting better. Can Gobert Cat win a title? I have concerns about that. There were moments when one of the two were in foul trouble. It's hard at the end of games to play both of them on the floor together because teams can exploit the T-Wolves being a little bit slower and having so much size. So fascinating to see how they move forward with kind of that big 3, literally big 3 there in Minnesota. Dallas Mavericks. Huge move for them, acquiring Klay Thompson, 3-year, $50 million deal from Golden State for Josh Green and a second-round pick. Traded away Tim Hardaway Jr. That was more of a salary cap shedding move. 3 second-round picks to Detroit for Quentin Grimes, who I don't hate as a player. And then Dallas signing Najee Marshall, 3-year, $27 million deal. And then Spencer Dinwiddie comes back to Dallas on a vet min. I thought that the Mavericks in the NBA Finals a little exploited with the Celtics wings. They also, in the NBA Finals, struggled to knock down the three. Bring in Klay Thompson, Najee Marshall. You get some three-point shooters who can also defend the wing. So I like what the Mavericks did, and I think that things in the West are going to be very tight, just like they were last year. The bench, I think, is in a pretty solid spot. They're starting five: Luka, Kyrie, Daniel Gafford, Klay Thompson, PJ Washington. Some of the moves that Nico Harrison, their general manager, made last year ended up working out very, very well. This is a team that went to the finals, got even better, in my opinion. Luka will always put a team in a position to win. He can carry a team because he's so clutch, so talented, so well-rounded outside of defense, and can impact the game in so many ways offensively, even when his shot isn't going in. Can he stay in better shape? If he stays in better shape, doesn't worry and get so emotional about foul calls, that's the next step of his maturity as a basketball player, and just not being a traffic cone on defense. Denver Nuggets lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Reggie Jackson, another team that is tight on cash. Signed Russell Westbrook to a 2-year, $6.7 million deal. It's kind of your KCP replacement without the three. Signed Dario Saric, former Sixers legend, to a 2-year, $10.5 million deal. Drafted Deron Holmes, the center out of Dayton, who did tear his Achilles, unfortunately. Nuggets roster, Jamal Murray. Christian Brown is going to step in for those KCP minutes, and then from 2 years ago, kind of that Bruce Brown type of role. He's going to have to get better shooting the three, but a really good athlete who can defend. You have Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr. He has to play a little bit better because the Nuggets, as compared to previous years, a little bit thinner, so they need some more contributions from their third best player. Losing KCP with no true replacement because Russell Westbrook's a different player, not good. And Nikola Jokic, as we know, always going to keep this team in contention, similar to Luka. He is just so dynamic with just impacting the game on the offensive end of the floor. Phoenix Suns signed Tyus Jones, Monte Morris, and Mason Plumlee. Re-signed Josh Okogie, Royce O'Neal, and then Bol drafted Ryan Dunn, the forward out of Virginia. And then Osa Ighodaro, center out of Marquette, who's an interesting player. That Suns team, they needed to bring in a point guard who could initiate the offense, pressure the rim a little bit. They just didn't have that player last year. I thought it was crazy, the discourse that we saw. Some national NBA analyst was like, you got to start Isaiah Thomas. You need a point guard to pressure the rim. I'm like, really? So they bring in Tyus Jones, which I think is really going to help them a lot. He showed in Memphis when he had to fill in for Ja Morant, that, he could run that first unit and you can have a winning team with him running things at that point guard spot. Yusuf Nurkic, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal rounding out that starting five. Kind of the same issue, though, that comes to mind when I think about Phoenix this year and last year. Just light on depth. Plumlee can help you in the front court for sure, and I think that that's something that Phoenix needed to address. This is a better overall roster than last year. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, still elite. How much does KD have left in the tank? We'll certainly see. Can they stay healthy, and does the new depth work? Lastly, NBA Finals champs. Point system once again from ESPN. Boston Celtics, 82 points. Oklahoma City Thunder, 37 points. So, translation, Boston Celtics, massive favorites to win the NBA championship for the second consecutive year. Good news is Philadelphia, third most points at 18, ahead of the Denver Nuggets, Milwaukee Bucks, and New York Knicks. So interesting that the Knicks were well ahead of the Milwaukee Bucks, but the Bucks still up there as far as NBA Finals champs opportunities. Chip, 76ers outlook this year. Got to do it. You just got to do it. There are no more excuses. It is time to get the job done. If this team does not get past the second round, I look at this season as a massive failure.
Yeah, you didn't make all these moves to stay where you have been in the Joel Embiid era, which is maxing out at the second round. You're absolutely right. It would be a disappointment if this team doesn't at least get to the conference finals. And we talked about the Eastern Conference. A lot of teams over there either staying put in the Boston Celtics are getting better, like the New York Knicks. Young teams like the Magic, like the Pacers, the Bucks as well. But then you look out west, a lot of the best teams out west got even better. OKC was already naturally going to be a better team, even if they kept the same roster because they're so young and improving. But then they go out and add two major difference makers in Hartenstein and Caruso. You know, you think about the Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards getting that Olympic experience. He looks like he can be a true MVP candidate and 1A alpha on a championship team. But again, can that Gobert, Cat front court work? I do like their surrounding pieces. I think they're going to be, again, another tough out when you think about potentially facing these teams in a finals matchup. You had the Mavericks, just made the finals, and in my opinion, got even better. You have the Phoenix Suns are always an interesting team because of their talent. The Denver Nuggets are always going to be in title contention as long as Jokic is there. You know, you think about teams like the Pelicans who added a DeJounte Murray out west. The Lakers, LeBron and AD, are they going to be able to have anything this year as LeBron and his career winds down? So, look, the NBA is very, very talented and very, very spread out right now. There's a lot of good teams that have chances to make deep runs. The Celtics are probably the one team I'd say is like truly, truly stacked when it comes to roster-wise, but I think they can be had as well with the moves the Sixers made.
Yeah.
So, look, a lot of teams got better. It's going to be a very competitive season, but the Sixers, with what they did, are right up there, and I think have as good of a shot of any team, East or West, to be NBA Finals champions at the end of the season.
Yeah, no doubt. Really excited for this upcoming season. I mean, the obvious point, all of the moves that the Sixers have made, this is the best team that they have had in years. I know there have been some Sixers teams in recent memory during this Joel Embiid era. Ben Simmons obviously a part of that, where there was hope, and the Sixers had some high expectations. But come on, when you stack up those teams with the possibilities that this team has, better coach, better roster, superstar level talent, depth, really gets you excited looking ahead to October. So hopefully today you were informed. Good show for me, honestly, just getting a refresher on what some other NBA teams have done and which players are where. With that, we round out with this. Which NBA team had the best offseason? Philadelphia, duh.